They told you how to see, not what to see, but how. From the moment you opened your eyes, the world was interpreted for you. The colors, the shapes, the roles, the rules. What's acceptable, what's impossible, what's real, what's not. And you absorbed it all, unaware that what you were learning wasn't the truth. It was a version of reality carefully constructed by others. A man-made lens placed over your inner sight. Every institution, every adult, every system around you whispered in unison, "This is the way it is." But they never told you that they had decided it. They never told you that reality, as you know it, was a script, and that you were handed a role you didn't choose in a story you didn't write. If you've ever questioned what's behind the curtain of what we call normal, share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective might be exactly what someone else needs to remember what they forgot. Welcome. What if I told you that your suffering is not rooted in events, but in the meaning you attach to them? That perception isn't just a passive reception of life, but a creative act. You are not just a receiver of experience. You are its interpreter, and therefore its transformer. But most people never reclaim that power. Why? Because from early childhood, we are trained to see ourselves through systems not designed for liberation, but for control. School taught you to obey before it taught you to question. Media taught you fear before it taught you imagination. Religion, society, even family, no matter how well-meaning, often installed a worldview that served their needs, not your soul's expansion. So your thoughts weren't born from insight, they were copied. Your self-image wasn't discovered, it was downloaded. And your understanding of reality became a mirror of someone else's agenda. And yet, there's something in you that doesn't conform. There's a fracture now, isn't there? A quiet rebellion in your bones. A whisper that won't die even if you ignore it. A sense that something is off, that life isn't what you were told, that maybe none of this is fixed, that maybe perception is reality and that reality can be changed. This is not philosophy, it's spiritual physics. The same event can happen to two people, but their inner world will turn it into two completely different realities. One feels broken, the other finds strength. One sees betrayal, the other sees redirection. Why? Because the event isn't the story. You are the author of the story. And if you've never taken the pen into your own hand, someone else has been writing your life for you. This is why the real revolution begins in the mind. When you begin to reclaim perception, you begin to reclaim reality. And that's exactly what the system fears, because it doesn't need to use chains anymore. It uses your perception. If it can control what you think things mean, it doesn't have to control what you do. You'll control yourself. You'll self-censor. You'll self-restrict. That's why this awakening matters. This moment where you question, what if I don't have to see things the way I was taught? What if I can change the lens? That's when the real transformation begins. That's when you start to wake up, not just spiritually, but existentially. You no longer see a job loss as failure. You see it as a shift. You no longer see loneliness as punishment. You see it as purification. You no longer see resistance as rejection. You see it as redirection. But let's go deeper. What shapes perception in the first place? Memory, emotion, trauma, belief. You don't see the world as it is. You see it through the unhealed and unresolved parts of you. Your perception is a projection of your inner wounds, disguised as reality. That's why two people can walk through the same door, and one sees opportunity while the other sees danger. not because the door changed, but because they did or didn't. This is why shadow work is so crucial. Until you bring unconscious patterns into the light, your perception will always be skewed by old wounds disguised as truth. And those unhealed wounds, if left unattended, will keep recreating the same experiences in different forms, tricking you into thinking life is fixed, when really it's looped. Carl Jung spoke of the inner archetypes, the hidden personalities within us that shape our behavior and worldview. The abandoned child, the inner critic, the martyr, the rebel. When you haven't faced these inner figures, they become the filter through which you see. They become the voice behind your decisions, your judgments, your fears. They shape what you think people mean, what you assume is true, and how you react to reality. But you can meet them, talk to them, reparent them. This is not fantasy. It is alchemy. You are not meant to live in reaction. You are meant to live in creation. When you take full responsibility for your perception, you stop being a victim of the world and start becoming a participant in the shaping of your inner and outer reality. That doesn't mean ignoring injustice or bypassing pain. It means transcending the programmed reaction to pain. Pain happens, yes, but suffering, more often than not, is the story we attach to it. And that story is optional. That story is often inherited. When you recognize that, you step outside the loop and begin to observe the machinery from a higher ground. You realize you were never just living. You were responding to instructions hidden so deeply inside your subconscious that they felt like instincts. But instincts can be trained, and many of yours were, by a system that benefits from your disempowerment. The school system never taught you how to self-reflect, how to observe your thoughts, how to challenge beliefs. It taught you to memorize, repeat, conform, and comply. That's not education, that's indoctrination. And when your entire worldview is shaped in a classroom that never asked "Who are you?" but only "How will you fit?" you come out believing your value is external, tied to grades, to approval, to status, to performance. You begin to see the world not as a living, breathing experience, but as a competition, a hierarchy, a game of survival. And that worldview shapes everything: your relationships, your career, your spirituality, even your self-worth. You begin to believe that you are only as good as your achievements. And in doing so, you abandon the one thing no system can ever take from you: your authentic self. The media compounds this illusion. It bombards you with images, stories, and ideologies that train your nervous system to stay in fear, shame, or lack. Every commercial implies you are not enough. Every headline amplifies danger. Every algorithm pushes content that keeps you reactive, divided, and distracted. This is not accidental, it's systemic. Because when you are afraid, you are easily guided. When you are ashamed, you are silent. When you are divided, you are weak. And most of all, when you are distracted, you never have time to question the roots of your reality. You never ask, "Is this belief even mine?" You never stop long enough to notice that your perception was hijacked and remodeled to match the needs of others. The system doesn't want you conscious, it wants you compliant. But there's a crack forming in the illusion now. You can feel it. That tiny space between reaction and awareness. That moment you hesitate before scrolling, before judging, before surrendering to the old pattern. That's the door. The door back to you. The you who sees beyond appearances. The you who senses that things are not as fixed as they seem. The you who understands that perception is not truth. but it can be a tool, a key, a ladder out of the maze. And once you have that key, you no longer have to live inside the frame you were given. You can create your own. Start asking, what belief is underneath this reaction? Whose voice is narrating my choices? What story am I living in, and do I even agree with it? These questions are the beginning of freedom, because what you don't examine, you automatically obey. And what you obey without question becomes your cage. This is what ancient mystics and modern psychologists alike have tried to show us. The outer world is a reflection of the inner world. Change the way you see, and the world changes in response. You don't have to overthrow governments or burn down institutions to reclaim your sovereignty. You only have to see differently. That alone threatens every system built on your submission. Because a person who sees clearly can no longer be manipulated. A person who questions perception is no longer a slave to illusion. And that kind of person, awake, empowered, and self-defined, is the most revolutionary being alive. But this journey is not without discomfort. Awakening perception means confronting the lies you've believed your entire life. It means grieving the years spent chasing someone else's dream. It means shedding identities that once protected you but now confine you. It means sitting in the silence between your old self and the one you're becoming. That silence is sacred. It's the void from which creation emerges. And if you can sit with it, without rushing to fill it with noise, you'll hear the whisper of your true voice again. The one that was buried, the one that sees clearly. The whisper becomes louder the more you honor it. At first, it might come through as doubt, questioning a job, a relationship, a belief you once clung to. Then it becomes curiosity, reading something new, exploring a different worldview, sitting with silence longer than usual. Eventually, it becomes a roar, a deep, undeniable pull toward alignment. You start to notice what feels like truth, not truth as in fixed answers, but truth as in resonance. Something inside you hums when you're close to it. That hum is your compass now. It's subtle, but it's real. And the more you listen, the more your outer world begins to shift. Not because the system changed, but because your perception of the system did. You see, the man-made system isn't just governments or institutions. It's the invisible lattice of assumptions you were born into. It's in the way people chase time, fear silence, measure success. It's in how society praises constant productivity while dismissing stillness as laziness. It's in the culture of comparison, competition, and control. This system lives in language, in architecture, in economics, in family dynamics, and it perpetuates itself through the repetition of unquestioned norms. But perception, clear, conscious perception, is the quiet rebellion that destabilizes it. Because when you see the gears turning, you are no longer mesmerized by the machine. You begin to walk differently through life. You feel the pressure to perform, but you no longer identify with it. You still engage with the world, but from a place of choice, not coercion. You say yes because it aligns, not because you're afraid to say no. You work, create, love, rest, all with the awareness that you are no longer running a program. You're writing it. You don't have to reject society to free yourself from its unconscious grip. You simply have to rise above it, like standing on a hilltop and realizing the maze that trapped you was only ever waist high. You were always able to step over it. You just never saw the edge. Perception becomes a spiritual path. Because every time you choose awareness over reaction, presence over programming, soul over script, you are practicing liberation. This is not about superiority or being above others. It's about coming home to your authentic vision. And the irony is, the clearer your perception, the more compassion you develop. You begin to see that everyone else is trapped in a similar illusion, running stories that aren't theirs, fighting battles they don't understand. So you judge less, you project less, you listen more. And this softening is strength. True perception doesn't harden your heart, it expands it. That's why awakening perception is not a one-time event. It's a continual peeling away of the fog, a lifetime of noticing, of remembering, of choosing. And as your clarity deepens, you become less reactive, more grounded. You lose interest in arguments that lead nowhere. You stop feeding energy into drama. You start to trust your inner knowing more than external approval. You become a quiet revolution in a world addicted to noise. So how do you live in a system that thrives on manipulation and still stay sovereign? You stay awake. You build rituals that reconnect you to yourself. Daily moments of stillness, breath, reflection, gratitude. You build awareness like a muscle. You clean your perception by decluttering your mind, your habits, your digital inputs. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be aware. That alone shifts your frequency, because when perception becomes conscious, you reclaim your power, not just metaphorically, but energetically, emotionally, and even physically. You speak differently, move differently. People notice something has changed but can't name it. It's because you are no longer asleep inside their dream. And now, as you move deeper into this shift, a new kind of clarity begins to emerge. You begin to see the man-made system not as a villain to be defeated, but as a construct that no longer owns your allegiance. You can still work a job, pay bills, live in a city, but you are not identified with the matrix of expectations anymore. You live within it, but not of it. You make conscious choices instead of habitual ones. You question everything, not with paranoia, but with presence. You understand that the only real freedom starts in the unseen, in the mind, in the field of perception, where your beliefs and reactions are born. This is where the internal system, the energetic and psychological foundation, starts to replace the outer system. You begin to notice when your nervous system is hijacked by urgency. You pause instead of panicking. You ask your body what it needs. You stop performing roles that no longer fit. The more you build this inner structure, the less you need to cling to external validation. And without that dependence, you are no longer controllable. The system feeds off unconscious participation, but you're no longer feeding it. Now you live by different laws, not the written ones, but the energetic ones. You value alignment over ambition. You choose rest over burnout. You build instead of chase. And you recognize that your attention, your conscious awareness, is your most sacred currency. What you feed grows. What you stare at becomes your mirror. What you believe becomes your cage or your freedom. This doesn't mean you never fall back into old patterns. You will. We all do. But now you notice faster. You realign quicker. You hold yourself with more compassion. And every time you return to presence, you reinforce the neural and energetic pathways of sovereignty. You start to feel the vast difference between reacting from programming and responding from clarity. That's how you know you're free, not because the world changed, but because your inner stance did. Eventually, your perception becomes less about analyzing and more about seeing. Simply seeing what is, without distortion, without needing to categorize or label everything, without grasping or resisting, just being. And in that state, there is a deep calm, a freedom beyond language, a return to source. So today, as you listen to this, ask yourself, what lens are you looking through? Who gave you that lens? And are you ready to choose your own? Because you were never meant to be molded, you were meant to remember. You were not designed to be a follower of systems, but a creator of realities. And the moment you reclaim your perception, you begin to bend reality, not through force, but through frequency. You don't fight the system, you rise above it. You don't wait for the world to change. You become the field where the new world is born. Everything is perception, every thought, every feeling, every limit you've inherited, every truth you've accepted. If you want to be free, begin here. Begin with how you see. That's the way out, that's the way in. That's the key.
Drop a follow and like the video if this resonates with you, and don't hesitate to cheer up and support fellow brothers and sisters difficult times in the comments. Chosen one, keep your head up and stay true to yourself, always with love.